Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in, Mass Street fans. It's a Sports Daily Thursday. It's a game day for the Wichita State and K-State alumni teams coming off of a thrilling KU alumni team win last night. I'm Jacob Albracht alongside Tommy Castor, Jad Chambers. Producing for us, it is Sports Daily. We got all kinds of good stuff coming up for you on the show today. We'll talk a little TBT last night, and then a look ahead to tonight. We'll talk a little betting with our betting insider, Chelsea Messenger, after a week off for the All-Star break. We'll have our K-State insider, Tim Fitzgerald, joining us a little bit later in the show as well to talk all things Wildcats. Big 12 Media Days behind us, looking ahead to the season now as we sort of count things down to the beginning of the college football season. We've got the Open Championship, the British Open, whatever you want to call it out there, Breece Hall news, more NFL running back news, all kinds of good stuff. Jad Chambers producing for us. He's got the IHOP hotline, man, 869-1240. We'll have giveaways. We'll have some HTO tea and maybe coffee coming up a little later. We'll have some WindSurge voucher giveaways, all kinds of good stuff on this Thursday edition. Tommy, good morning. How are you?
Hey, good morning. I'm doing great. I apologize in advance if I'm a little distracted. I've got the Open Championship on in the background. Rory McIlroy and John Rahm just teed off for their round. And so I've kind of got a couple different things going on. So if I sound distracted, I'm paying attention to that.
You can't pay that much attention to a round one of a golf event.
Sure, I can. It's a major. Of course I can.
Well, I mean, I know it's a major, but like you have, there's like 5 seconds of action and then 10 minutes of downtime. So I think you'll be all right.
That's not the way it works. It's been fun so far. Tommy Fleetwood is tied for the lead. It's been a great
they don't
round
have
so
golf
far.
carts. Doesn't it take them like 15 minutes to walk around and find their ball after every shot?
But they're showing other golfers. They're going back and forth to different guys. So
yeah, maybe
there's always action going on.
Maybe I'm doing it wrong when I go play golf because there's lots of downtime in between each shot when I'm playing golf.
You're also not Rory McIlroy.
Yeah, no, you're right. I'm not. Yeah, we can get British Open updates throughout here tomorrow. Probably spend a little more time with that as we get a round in the books. As they've been going since 3 a.m. I think our local time here. Did you watch TBT last night? I know that we did. We love the tournament, and look, it's an interesting tournament because teams are rusty. In cases like Mass Street, some guys are a little long in the tooth, and that was very apparent early in the game, taking on younger players for a We Are D3 team. But then you get to Elam Ending. And the beauty to me of the TBT is that no matter what happens, you're not playing against a clock. You're playing against a score, right? And so Mass Street's able to hang in there, sort of loosen things up a little bit. The guy that we thought would lead the way led the way, and Thomas Robinson. He was a force, 21 points, 15 rebounds, and the game-winning shot on a swim move at the free throw line, which was incredible. But Mass Street gets it done, and they win it 70-67. It was an ugly start. Let's just be totally honest here. It was tough to watch early. But then after halftime, it got really good, and they seemed to find a little bit of a groove. And then you get into that Elam Ending, and Tommy, it's almost always good. Like, that's the beauty of this thing. That Elam Ending, these games are incredible because of the Elam Ending. I'm as high on the Elam Ending as to say, like, I wish it was everywhere. I really mean that too. That's not even like hyperbole today. I've said it for 3 years. This is a better way to end basketball games. But it was great. Mass Street advances, and it was a great crowd. They were into it. How much did you enjoy that, Tommy?
I enjoyed the Elam Ending for sure. Let's be honest, though. The Mass Street team looked absolutely washed for a majority of the game. They looked tired. They looked old. They couldn't make a shot. They really missed,
old, though.
They are, and they really missed having one of their point guards. Both Tyshawn Taylor and Mario Chalmers were out and not part of the game, and they really struggled. A guy by the name of Rodney Little, who I'm not familiar with, I don't know if you are, but Rodney Little played point guard for the Mass Street team, just basically because he was the only one, I guess, that they could put out there to play that position. So they were really, really thin at the one. But really, it was Thomas Robinson. He was the only force, for the most part, on that team that was able to keep Mass Street in the game and then ultimately win the game with the Elam Ending. I'm with you. I love the Elam Ending. I thought it was novelty at first. The first couple of years that I watched it, I was like, okay, like, this is cute. It's fun. I'm not sure you can really, adopt it in higher levels of basketball. But recently, over the last, year or so, I've come around on it. And I really think it is something that you could introduce maybe at the NCAA level. I think it would have to be something that maybe you started in lower stages of college basketball first, maybe NAIA or NCAA Division II, and see how it works. But man, it's super exciting. TBT is the perfect vessel to have the Elam Ending and have it be on a national scale so people can get used to it. It's so much fun to watch. And going back to this specific game, Mass Street and especially Thomas Robinson able to get it done. That team hangs on. They move on to Saturday. They've got to figure out what they're going to do at point guard on Saturday when they take on the Missouri alumni team. It's a border showdown. It's going to be incredible to watch. But Mass Street has got to play better early on Saturday if they want a chance to advance.
Well, Mario Little was good. He came in late. He's 35 years old, right? That's what's so crazy. And he stepped in at point guard, I think, there for a little bit and sort of stabilized. I don't know what the status of the roster is. It's always, up in the air. Keith Langford basically came out of retirement to make one last run. So we'll see if they can get it done. I mean, they did not look in that game like we've seen the aftershocks look in recent years, right? There's definitely, I think, a difference there in what we've seen, but that's the beauty of this thing. Maybe Mario Little, who didn't, play a ton at Kansas, could come through and be the hero for Kansas. And you never know. And he was really good last night, along with Thomas Robinson. He had 17 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. Keith Langford powered through. I saw interview on their Twitter page with him after the game, and you could just tell, like, it's in pain. And that's the thing, like, recovery becomes the biggest question now for Maastricht and Thomas Robinson and Keith Langford and Mario Little, these guys in their mid-30s. Can they get recovered quickly? Now, the good news for them is they get a day off here before they play. And here's what I'm also interested in. Tommy, you grew up a KU guy. How much does it mean that they're playing a Mizzou alumni team too? You think that adds a little flavor to this? Is that a factor here at all? I know it looks good on paper.
100%. And this was a matchup that I had circled when the brackets came out, that, man, if both of these teams can win their opening round matchups, this is going to be a really fun second round matchup where you've got the KU alumni team and the Missouri alumni team. Remember, Thomas Robinson, who was the star of the game last night for Maastricht, had the biggest block probably in the history of Kansas basketball in 2012, the final border showdown when Missouri was leaving the Big 12. Inside Allen Fieldhouse, the Jayhawks came back to win that game, punctuated by that massive block from Thomas Robinson. So there's a lot of history there. And when you think of the border showdown, the border war, whatever you want to call it, and you think of basketball, at least for me, the first thing that comes to mind is that block that Thomas Robinson had to seal the victory for Kansas in 2012. And he was the guy last night for this team, and he's going to be taking on a Missouri alumni team tomorrow night. So you better believe there's going to be extra motivation.
And I would I would imagine the Missouri team will. I don't think he'll be able to bully ball the Missouri team. I wouldn't think. That was all KU really had to go with, and they've got some things to work on, and I'm sure that they will, and we'll see what other guys can maybe make it in town to be on that roster. But they get it done. I was really worried that they wouldn't there for a while. I was like, man, this sucks, because there is some momentum for this team. Not quite at the level of the Aftershocks, but that was a good crowd. To just have KU on an island by itself. You'll get the blend tonight of K-State. And then, of course, all the crazy Shocker fans. And then Friday, man, you could have just a really cool environment. And that's what we're hoping for, right? Like we want all of them to win and advance and be able to continue to play through the weekend as people, can make their way to it.
Yeah, and for this Maastricht team, it's good for TBT to have them continue on because you've got star power on the roster, right? So for ratings, I know some of these games are going to be on ESPN2. The one last night was on ESPN Plus. But regardless, like, you want to have that star power. You want to have those notable names. And, I'm watching this game, and I know you bet Maastricht to cover, which obviously didn't happen.
It was dumb. I knew it was dumb when I did it with an Elam ending. Like don't bet a cover on an Elam ending game when it's double digits. That just almost never happens. And whatever. It was I just wanted to dabble for fun. I was like, oh, it's there. Let's take a shot at it.
I mean, there was a legitimate and real concern that it could have gone the exact opposite way. And it looked like we are D3 could have blown the doors off the water, or blown the doors off the house from Maastricht. I mean, they had them on the ropes several different times throughout the game. And the one thing that I also noticed and that I thought of while I was watching the game, and then even after the game was over with, the Maastricht squeaked by and got the win, I thought, man, in that current iteration of that team, that's not a TBT championship contender. They're just not. They've got to have better play at the point guard position. So I don't know if Tyshawn Taylor is going to be able to play or not. They held him out due to injury. Mario Chalmers didn't play due to injury. Wayne Selden didn't play. So there were a handful of guys that I think could be major contributors if healthy. I don't know what their status is going to be going into the game against the Missouri alumni, but I think if this team wants to be at least considered in the mix to be a contender to win this championship, they've got to have full firepower, their full arsenal of the talent ready to go.
Yeah. But it's impossible to know. Like, a lot of the times these schedules for these guys are so wacky and weird. Like, you really don't know until right before if somebody can get in and get it done. But they do need something probably. Now, the other thing though that you take away from this, and we've seen this in other years too, like, that also can just be as simple as shake a little rust off. Now we know what to expect out of this tournament. Now we know how we've got to approach these games and, and get prepared for it. And you've got, in the Morris twins, and I don't know that I saw Markeith last night. He was part of the interview process earlier last week. But either way, you got really smart basketball minds that are going to know how to adjust. Like, it doesn't, those are some of the best basketball players in the world in their primes. All right, now we know how this thing goes. Now we know how this plays. What do we have to do to make sure that, that what happened to us early in that game doesn't happen again? You got to shoot, you got to be able to shoot threes. That it's a tale as old as time in this tournament. You see a team like we are D3, like a lot of those guys are young, right? And these guys can hit open threes. I don't know if you've ever
Yeah.
seen basketball at the
Yeah.
Division 2 or 3 level, right? They're just not tall, but they can shoot. And so, you can't leave guys open for three. That guy with the ponytail and like a killer farmer's tan, the lanky dude for We Are D3. He's just killing them when they left him open. So
Yeah.
you can't do that, defensively. If you can play great defense in this tournament, by the way, you got a real good chance. Just as a general rule.
I think it also shows and is a good reminder that there's really talented basketball players at every level of the sport, right? I mean, this was a team made up of D3 players, and I think it's easy to think, oh man, like the Kansas alumni, they're going to run all over them. That didn't happen. There are really talented players that play at a variety of levels of basketball and maybe didn't get the offers, to go D1 or even D2 for a number of reasons. Maybe they're a little bit undersized or, whatever the case might be. But man, they were shooting lights out. I don't know the final stats. I didn't have it in front of me, but I know at one point I saw on Twitter, I believe during the game, that We Are D3, they were like 6 of 19 from 3, which isn't amazing, but they were 6 of 19. Meanwhile, Mass Street was like 1 of 12. That's going to be a major difference right there. And so for Mass Street moving forward, not only do you have to have better play at the one, but you got to be able to make some open threes too.
Yeah, and you do, and you got to hope Thomas Robinson can get a handful of games because he's the best player on the floor, and we assumed he would be, right? We sort of assumed that would happen, and that definitely played out. But it was fun. It was fun in the way that it ended. It wasn't necessarily fun in the beginning, but it was basketball, and it was a good environment. And like it is most of the time, the Elam inning provides us an opportunity to get really excited. I watched, So here's how my viewing experience went last night. So I had the game on, watched the first half, got the kids to bed. I was like, all right, this is hurting my eyes. Like my eyes are in pain right now. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn on Justified, right? The new Justified show, which is, a continuation of my favorite show ever. And so I'm watching that, and I've got the game then on my phone, just like, are they going to get back into this? And so I'm kind of glancing, and then, eventually, of course, you have to turn off the show and turn the game back on right on time, and it was great. And then, I was so like oddly hyped up for July 20th basketball after the game, and I had just watched this show, which had a great ending too. So I'm like bouncing around the living room, just like all excited. My wife's just shaking her head at me like, what the hell's wrong with you? But that's what we get out of this tournament, and that's what we love. And hopefully K-State and Wichita State alumni teams can return the favor and do what they need to do tonight and get this done. And look, they put it up. They put up the graphic last night. Best TBT crowds ever, and like the top 5 spots all belong to Wichita. So you could say whatever you want. This community has got behind this tournament. I think it's really cool. I think it's really endearing. I think it's why I cannot wait for the NCAA tournament to get back here because this town shows up for stuff like this.
Yeah, and how about this overall tournament, like just from start to finish, the way that it's all put together, the way that the teams have come around and supported it. It's gone from a fun idea to now it's kind of must-see TV, right? And for sports starved crowd in Wichita or even nationally, in late July where there's not a whole lot else going on and you're waiting for football and it's the dog days of summer and baseball is going on, but who knows if you're locked into that. This provides, how cool is it that we're talking basketball on July 20th? Like that's awesome. So regardless if we're talking about the local crowd or just the overall consumption of this tournament, man, they've done it right. And it was a fun idea at the beginning. It's turned into something a lot bigger now.
It is. And I do think, by the way, that it will continue to grow. I think it will. They just have to, they have to keep getting it on TV and have good players play and have more high-profile teams play, because once people watch the ending of these games, that's when you get into it. And you're like, oh, man, that was really cool. And, the first year it played, it was like, what is the Elam ending? I'm kind of with you. And then you watch it and you're like, that's pretty cool. And then the second year, you're like, dude, I'm in on this. Like, I think that this is fantastic. And then soon after that, it's like, why don't we do this everywhere? What's everybody's least favorite part about a basketball game? Fouling at the end of the game, taking the game to the free throw line. This absolutely takes that away. It's like it eliminates the worst problem with basketball, and it could easily be implemented at every level. Like you don't even have to do anything. You just have you don't need new equipment. You don't need new technology. You just play the last 2 minutes differently, and it would be fantastic. 869-1240 is the number to call on the IHOP hotline. Joining us on that hotline when we return, our pal Chelsea Messenger. Let's talk a little betting. We'll see if she has any insight on the British Open, any futures bet in the worlds of football that she has on her mind, and she's always got some baseball insight. So we'll talk to Chelsea when we return. Sports Daily, Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor, coming right back.
This is Sports Daily on KFH.
On the line is the host of the Daily Tip and Odyssey Sports Betting Insider, Chelsea Messenger. Insider calls are presented by BetMGM. Go check out all of the latest lines today on the BetMGM app. Also, be sure to check out the Daily Tip podcast for more of Chelsea Messenger analysis. Just search BetMGM wherever you find your podcasts.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. It is Sports Daily here on KFH. Also join you on our video streams, which you can find on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. Our friend Chelsea Messenger joining us. Chelsea, let's gauge the level of degenerate you are here. Were you with us? Were you with me last night betting the TBT tournament? We're playing that here in Wichita, by the way. I lost my bet in the TBT. I'm guessing that you don't dabble there.
I do not. Is that the basketball tournament that's like I don't want to say washed up, but like former college basketball players?
Yeah, they're not washed up, but they are older in a lot of cases. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're young guys. But yes, there's a lot of like alumni teams in there, and then there's like a mix of people. We have it in Wichita, and so the Wichita State alumni team has become really popular and really good, and everybody loves it. And then, Kansas and Kansas State put together alumni teams that are here this year. I mean, Marcus Morris is coaching the Kansas team led by Thomas Robinson. So it was pretty fun last night. They did not cover, if you were wondering, though. They did not cover their bet.
I couldn't tell you a single line in that tournament. In fact, I did not know it was going on. So you got me there.
Yeah. All right. Let's start with some golf. British Open Championship, the Open Championship, whatever you want to call it, the Open. I know it's just getting underway, but any golf bets as we make our way through the early stages of this that you're on for this last major?
Yeah, the lazy girl bet that I put in before this tournament was Scottie Scheffler to finish in the top 5. It's only plus 175, but listen. He's finished in the top 5 in 7 straight tournaments, which is wild because you see some of the stories coming out of some of these tournaments and say, oh, Scottie Scheffler's really lost it with his putter. He's still figuring things out. He still finished in the top 5. So that's something that I had before the tournament started. Right now he's 1 under. It looks like his first round is just finished up. So I definitely think that he still has a shot. But in the betting market, it's hard to find value on Scottie Scheffler because he is so consistent and so dominant. So right now, live odds, he is plus 750, the third favorite behind Rory McIlroy, 6-1. Tommy Fleetwood up the leaderboard at 7-1, which we knew this going in. Tommy Fleetwood is one of the better irons players on the PGA Tour, the better links players on the PGA Tour. So those are guys that you want to target in the Open because it is a link style of golf course. That's why Jordan Spieth was one of the guys that a lot of people were targeting. He's 18-1 right now. But still, I would kind of wait to see maybe how the second day shakes out because right now I think the takeaway is that the conditions were very playable, on the first day. Obviously, there's some winds. The course is tough. They have that one bunker on, I believe it was 17, that looks like it's from the movie 300 where he kicks the guy into the pit and says, "This is Sparta." That's what it looks like. So this is not an easy course by any stretch of the imagination, but they are expecting tougher conditions throughout the weekend where there might be some rain, there might be some gusts of wind. So when you see an amateur at the top of the leaderboard, I believe it's Christo Lamprecht from South Africa, maybe don't jump on board just yet because I think when you see the tougher conditions, that's when the cream really rises to the top. And that's where we see guys, even if they don't score low, they're not going to implode. One hole's not going to break them like some of these younger guys do. So it's tough to say early on, but we know Rory's the favorite for a reason. He's coming in hot, just won the Scottish Open, also playing some incredible golf. And we know the last time he won a major, it was at this course. So wouldn't talk you off Rory either.
I think I'm really going to listen to you for the first time when it comes to a golf tournament. And I've resisted it for a while, but I'm going to listen and I'm not going to bet an outright winner. I'm going to look at top 10 or top 20. Are there any other players in your mind that you can get pretty good value on to be in the top 20? Like, I'm looking at maybe a Ricky Fowler who's had, really good success the last couple of months, maybe being in the top 20. Are there other golfers that you're looking at to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you for not following my golf. Golf's not like my number one strongest sport. So keep in mind that I'm not going to give you any super long shots because it's one of the fringy sports for me. I follow it, obviously. Sure. But wouldn't talk you off Ricky Fowler there. And I do think, here's my spiel on not betting outright. You can have, the greatest angle in the world, but if one golfer has a better weekend, you get $0 and you lose your stake. Because look at how good Robert McIntyre played last weekend, only to lose to Rory McIlroy. So you would have not won any money on him to win outright. But when you're playing those top 20, top 5, top 10 bets, there's a little bit more wiggle room. And we know that the payout isn't as large, but still it gives you something that even if they don't win, you can still kind of come out on top. Going in, I kind of like Adam Scott as well, known for being a good links player, but right now he's one over. He's not out of it because we're seeing a ton of guys at even and a ton of guys at 1 under. So that's the thing. Even after one day, I think this tournament is still wide open. In the betting market, I feel like it still hasn't completely caught up to Brooks Koepka and some of the other live guys. They don't get the same credit as some of the other players just because they're on the live tour. Brooks Koepka at 1 under as well. We know he is Mr. Major. So wouldn't be surprised if he comes out of the woodwork and has a couple good days here and there. But Ricky Fowler, top 10, I think is a good look.
All right, Chelsea, let's look elsewhere on the sports landscape. Is it still too early for you, or have you begun to look at all at some of the NFL futures markets?
Yeah, I definitely have looked at them. We've been running through the divisions and trying to pick some winners there. I think today on our show, The Daily Tip, a little plug there, just search The Daily Tip wherever you get your podcast. We've been doing the NFC South. This feels like one of the more winnable divisions in all of football. And I feel like if you look at those bad divisions where it's really a toss-up for anybody, that's where you play the underdogs. And I know the Saints look like the best team on paper. They have the best quarterback going in with Derek Carr. But riddle me this. If you're a team that's favored to win the division and you have a quarterback who is coming off a year with a completion percentage of 60%, he got booted for a reason, he's getting older, then your top offensive player, Alvin Kamara, facing a suspension for God knows how long, especially the way the NFL treats the Saints. And then your number one receiver, Michael Thomas, is kind of a head case. So it's really hard to know what to expect out of him. So it's not that I'm saying the Saints aren't the best team in that division. I'm just saying at plus 125, it is too short of a price for me. You can take the Falcons and the Panthers, and if one of those teams win the NFC South, you would be up money. So I would rather do that. Take the Falcons at plus 220 and the Panthers at plus 350.
Taking a look at the AFC South, obviously the big news, DeAndre Hopkins signing with the Tennessee Titans. I know that you follow the Titans pretty closely. How does that change their value in your mind in that division? Of course, the Jaguars, are the odds-on favorites like they were last season. What do you think that changes as far as the Titans' hopes in that particular division?
I'm still not so sure that the Titans can win that division, but I'll say this about Mike Vrabel coach teams. If anybody can get the most with the least, it has to be Mike Vrabel. You've got to remember, the year that they were the number one seed coming out of the AFC was the year where they had a whole host of injuries. I think they set the record for most players used on an active squad in a single NFL season. So knowing that going in, the Titans aren't getting a lot of love this year. And I think it's probably correct because their offensive line was terrible from the jump. They did draft an offensive lineman in the first round. I do like that. But then one of our offensive linemen I shouldn't say that, I'm not on the team, but one of the Titans offensive linemen just got suspended for gambling, and we needed that depth pretty badly on the offensive line. But to the detractors saying that, yeah, DeAndre Hopkins is a great weapon, but he's playing with, mid quarterback Ryan Tannehill, look at the numbers that A.J. Brown put up. He came out of the gate with back-to-back 1,000-yard receiving seasons with mid Ryan Tannehill. So maybe the Titans aren't going to be good, but I would expect DeAndre Hopkins to have a good season. Ryan Tannehill can get him the ball, and he's going to get the targets because he is the true only number one receiver in Tennessee. And Ryan Tannehill put together some great seasons with A.J. Brown when he was still in the fold. So maybe the Titans aren't good, but I do think DeAndre Hopkins is a good pickup. And plus, he's somebody who's motivated. This is the guy that put out his own hype video after he got suspended and saying, like, oh, I'm making my return. And we're like, all right, you weren't hurt. You were just suspended. But it feels like he still kind of has that fire inside of him. So I do like the signing. I'm not sure if it translates to wins.
Do you look at any player futures? Everyone obviously here following the Chiefs. Chelsea Messenger, our Odyssey betting insider, joining us on the show today. Patrick Mahomes, 6.5 to 1 to win an MVP. I always think MVPs are a little strange because sometimes stories get in. Like, I feel like there were years Tom Brady should have won it over Aaron Rodgers. Justin Herbert's an interesting name to me, who gets yet another weapon and another year of familiarity with a new staff. And any individual futures that ever seem appealing to you?
I remember looking at the passing prop for Patrick Mahomes and thinking it was really high. I would need to have the number in front of me, but I think it was like an extremely high passing yardage total, which, if anybody can get it, it's Patrick Mahomes. And here's the thing about MVP. The years that, Aaron Rodgers lost it out to Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes is not an unlikable guy. And the fact that Aaron Rodgers won this award, what was it, a couple of years ago, when there were writers openly saying that they didn't vote for him because they hate his stance on other things, in the world. So Patrick Mahomes, I don't think that narrative is going to go against him. And if you look at all of the quarterbacks, like, who is still the best quarterback coach combo as far as offensive minded head coaches? It's still Andy Reid and it's still Patrick Mahomes. So I wouldn't talk anybody off of playing Patrick Mahomes. And at those prices for the MVP, you can pick a couple and still net some profit if you at least hit, like, obviously you're not going to win both of them, but you get what I'm saying. So maybe you pick Patrick Mahomes, and you can pick a long shot too if you like that. And if one of them hits, you'll be in the green.
I want to shift gears here real quick, Chelsea, to Major League Baseball. A big-time matchup happening in less than 2 hours from now. The Diamondbacks and the Braves. You've got Spencer Strider on the bump for the Braves and Zach Gallen pitching for the Diamondbacks. Two really solid pitchers this year in Major League Baseball. Are you staying away from that game, or is there an angle that you're looking at attacking it? What do you think about this matchup?
Yeah, here's the angle for the Diamondbacks. Play them on the run line. I don't know if you've done this in baseball, but you can get a run and a half, which means the Diamondbacks can lose by one and you can still win your bet. And that's been a cash cow for the Diamondbacks so far this season, especially on the road. On the run line this year, the Diamondbacks 30-16 covered that run line last night easily because they won that game outright. So I think the fact that you can get it from -135 or -125, I should say, is a pretty good bargain for one of the better teams in baseball. It's a top 10 offense. They're 54-42. So yes, the Braves are a wagon, but still they got to win by more than one. And remember this is why I like playing run lines for the visiting underdog, because if the home team, the favorite, is ahead going into the bottom of the ninth, they're not going to play the bottom of the ninth. So if they're only up one, guess what? They don't get to cover the run line because they're not going to play the bottom of the ninth. I know the pitching matchup is good here. I think it's basically even with Zach Gallen and Spencer Strider. Spencer Strider looks mortal as of late over his last 7 games. He has a 4.83 ERA, which is a far cry from the domination that we saw early on. I'll say Zach Gallen is worse on the road, but still, this Diamondbacks offense is really solid. So I'll take the Diamondbacks getting a run and a half, especially against the Braves, who have been brutal at covering the run line at home, 22-28 on the run line at home this year.
All right, Chelsea Messenger, our betting insider. Before we let you go, Chelsea, we always like to know what your favorite plays of the day are this time of year, because there are so many in each individual day in baseball. What can't we miss today? What have you got? I think we may have lost Chelsea, but that's okay. We got.
She did not want to answer that last question, apparently.
Yeah, we got a lot there with Chelsea. Good stuff across the sports landscape, and we'll continue as we have those conversations to, look at football and begin to, think about the future. Tommy, I'm too impatient for football futures. I did some of those last year on like player props and stuff, and then all year I just got to look at that and think, God, like what a waste of time that $5 futures bet was, or whatever. Now. Like Super Bowl winners and stuff like that. That's fun. And those are bets that you put a little more on so they hold that value. Like I got Rangers futures bets to win the World Series all over the place. That's been an exciting bet to have because that's looked good and I'm getting more offered back and early cash outs and stuff like that. But anyway, that was the host of the Daily Tip and Odyssey Sports Betting Insider, Chelsea Messenger. Insider calls presented by BetMGM. Go check out all the latest lines today on the BetMGM app. Always appreciates the visits with Chelsea. If you missed anything there, if you're looking for a golf or a baseball angle, you'll be able to go back and listen to that interview for free on the Odyssey app. We'll come back. We'll give something away. A couple news and notes from very early NFL training camp, some of which impact the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll have that for you next on Sports Daily. Hey, you can go see the Wichita Wind Surge on us. Call in now for a 4-pack of vouchers for tickets to see a Wind Surge game of your choice. That's courtesy of Sports Daily and KFH. The IHOP hotline's open for you, 869-1240. To get to that 4-pack, I'll learn how to talk here in the next couple of seconds, and we'll get this segment going. All right, Tommy, training camps are underway. Lots of storylines. We may dig back into this just a little bit in the second hour, but news and notes that pertain to us here locally. Breece Hall will start camp on the PUP. I don't think that is a terribly big surprise. It's hard because, the PUP, once you get into the season, is not good, right? Like you have to sit out a certain amount of time, but I think it's far more loose in the training camp, and it just means he can't get into like active practice, but they can keep a roster spot and he can still do side work. And I don't see anything with that news that would indicate he's not still trending to be ready to go for the start of the season. I think that is still the sentiment there. Again, we're rooting for Dalvin Cook not to sign with the Jets because we don't want to see, Breece Hall's touches limited in any way. But they have other depth there, even if they don't get Dalvin Cook. So that's a news item I thought that was interesting. A couple more high-profile thing. Well, first, let's get to Isaiah Pacheco because he's practicing. He doesn't need to be or have to be, but he is because he's been injured and he's allowed to do that. But I suppose it's good to see him out there. There has been some injury concern with Isaiah Pacheco. But he's the kind of player for me, Tommy, like now that we know he's ready to go, the Chiefs could put Pacheco on bubble wrap the rest of the way until the season starts. I've told you a million times I am very, 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 very concerned about his ability to hold up the way he runs for an entire season here. And I think he's very important to what the Chiefs want to do late in games, putting games away. And if he doesn't play a snap in the preseason, I'd be totally fine with that.
I think the optics of him coming out on the first day of training camp and practicing and then practicing on day 2, that's good because there had been so much speculation about if he was going to be able to start the season or if they were going to have to put him on the PUP list. So him coming out and practicing, that's good. I think it calms the nerves a little bit. And now I'm okay with shutting him down. He made a couple of appearances. He worked out. He practiced. He's there. It doesn't look like they're going to put him on the PUP list. Now let's rest him and let's get him ready for week 1.
Right? Like he doesn't need to play at all. I don't think. I don't see any benefit.
I don't think he does
that,
either. No.
Because he is not wired in a way, Tommy, I don't think, where he can like cut it back at all. Like if he plays, he's going to run as hard as he can. Right at you. That's his style. That's why everybody fell in love with him. The problem with that in the NFL, especially when you're a smaller guy, because he's not a huge, he's not Derrick Henry back there or Adrian Peterson. It's hard to maintain that. And so, do it as little as possible.
And I'd much rather see in the preseason a player like Deneric Prince get touches to be able to show off what he can do and see if he can be a viable guy on the roster for the Chiefs this season. I think it might even be good, and I don't know if this is their plan or not, but I personally think it would be good to see Clyde Edwards-Helaire get some touches in the preseason to get him worked back into game shape. I don't know if they're going to be willing to do that.
Let's be real about why you want that. Just means that you wouldn't have to see Pacheco or Jerick McKinnon. So you have ulterior motives to that statement because I was going to say the same thing. Like, I'd be fine if they don't play us if Pacheco or McKinnon doesn't play a snap.
I do also think it could be valuable. I mean, keep in mind, Clyde Edwards-Helaire's been out for a while. This gets him back into game shape a little bit because we don't know what he can bring to the table now coming off that injury.
He's in a big moment this year. Like he's got a lot to play for. And there is a very good chance he plays meaningful snaps for the Chiefs this year if they don't add anybody to that room. I mean, that is absolutely on the table. Some other high-profile things, future Hall of Fame offensive lineman for the Cowboys is threatening a holdout. Saquon Barkley with more colorful language, threatening the thought of a total holdout. And there's a lot to bounce around, as there usually is with these contracts. So we'll get into some of that in the second hour too. A little conference realignment nugget. We'll talk a little college football, a little college sports with Tim Fitzgerald coming up right after the break here. Congratulations to our Wind Surge winner. We'll give away some iced tea a little bit later in the show as well. But Tim Fitzgerald, our K-State insider out of Go Power Cat, joins us next on the program when we return for hour number 2 of Sports Daily.
Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Hour number 2 here of Sports Daily. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor joining you. Chad Chambers producing. We are glad to be joined now by our K-State insider, Tim Fitzgerald.
He's got all the insight on what you want to know and maybe some of what you don't want to know. Here's K-State insider Tim Fitzgerald.
And Sandstorm means we are talking Wildcats with Fitz here. GoPowerCat.com, @LifeOfFitz on Twitter. You making the trip to Wichita for the Purple and Black alumni game, Tim?
Oh, no. I've learned my lesson with that. It doesn't pan out well for Kansas State in this event, but we'll see how they do this year. They seem to have a little bit deeper bench this time around.
Yeah, they should be okay. And experience matters too. When you return play, we've seen this with the Aftershocks, which is Wichita State team. When you return players each year that have done it before, your team gets better. KU, I don't know if you saw them last night, ran into that a little bit. It's a lot of first time for those guys, and you don't really know how to play it. And they eventually got through it, but it does take a little time. Marcus Foster, we think, is going to play. They've got some talent. Desi Sills is on this team, which he could, for me, that could end up being their best player because you're the freshest, right? But it's interesting, and they'll have, we think, a big crowd for it. Fitz, just while we're on basketball, anything we need to have our eye on with the Cats as far as Jerome Tang's concerned? Any movement? Any scholarship notes of value here?
Nothing right now. I mean, as we get towards the end of summer and what would be summer school, there's a good possibility we'll see some more movement in the transfer portal with guys that can now be in as grad transfers as they finish up some classes. So they still plan on filling the last 2 scholarships, but what they're seeking right now seems to be a little bit of a mystery.
Fitz, I know we're talking K-State here, and we're going to, of course, have more to talk about with the Wildcats, but I've been wanting to ask you this for the last week, and I'm going to ask you just plain and simple right now. How does George Kliavkoff still have a job with the Pac-12?
I don't know, man. I don't know. I've never seen anything like it. And I think this emphasizes the horrendous leadership of Pac-12 institutions that they put up with this. I've had a lot of information behind the scenes. It's not my information to share, but this has not gone well. And every time they think they have a deal, they don't have a deal. And part of the problem is the Pac-12 leadership refuses to accept that they're worth less than what they think. I think it comes from a lot of the arrogance we've seen and how they treat, Big 12 institutions, that they're far superior in every way. And when they're met with market forces that tell them that they have less value, they don't want to accept it. There's a rumor, another entity pointed out that they presented a plan. He presented a plan that was about what I would expect they can get to his board, and they said, no, go back and do better. Well, there's no place to go back to. They've kind of run out of partners. Even maybe NBC Peacock that have been looking at it might have left the discussions recently. So it's just a mess. The total, complete mess. And, they keep trying to say, well, the Big Ten waited till August before. The Big Ten had a long list of noted suitors. It wasn't about if they were going to get a deal, it was about who they handpicked to be the deal. And that's not at all what the Pac-12 is going through. They can't find an adequate deal that gives them the money and the linear exposure you need. And honestly, I don't think they can get either one of those right now in the marketplace. And Brett Yormark talked about it at Big 12 Media Day.
I look at it now, Fitz, and I wonder, like, what danger is there at this point with the economic landscape there? You see indicators that, hey, it might not be as bad as we fear it could be. Like, I wonder now if there's value for the Pac-12. You've got a year here until the deal's done to wait as long as you can. Like, if it's not there now, which I think we can all read between the lines, it's not there now. But if it isn't, why not wait at this point? Like, what difference is it going to make? And that obviously hinges on the other teams having, or the other schools having to make tough decisions. But if I'm the Pac-12 and it's not there now, it's getting to the point for me where I think you wait.
Well, you know what? I would agree with you, because the individual school leadership seems too cowardly to make a decision in the best interest of their university. They're playing a game of chicken with their very institutions' athletic programs. The most visible parts of their university could end up with no TV deal and just can be cast out onto the free market individually if they don't sign a deal. And at some point, won't Colorado, Arizona, and maybe another school say, enough? There's security right here. We're going to make the move. But I've had a lot of discussions behind the scenes, and it sounds like Colorado simply can't come to a conclusion. They're just kind of staring into the sky, not knowing what to do. And it's just pathetic leadership. And it's why the conference is in this position. We all want to turn to the commissioners and blame them. Yeah, they're bad hires, but the people that hired them are really the root of the issue here. And I think if I'm Brett Yormark, I'm beginning to look at this as, sure, we'd like to have some schools, but if this is your leadership, I don't want to deal with that. That'd be my problem now. So it's turned into just a whole layered mess for Pac-12 institutions.
So here's the other thing, Tim, that in Tim Fitzgerald, publisher, GoPowerCat.com, we talk a lot about this conference realignment because it is almost certainly going to impact the Big 12 in some way. But I had Phil Steele on, and we talked to him over the weekend and then this week. He thinks that the Pac-12 this year, based on what's there, could be a dark horse conference behind the two Big Two with some really good teams. And if that's the case, and this guy studies it as close as anybody, and they have the Heisman winner returning and all that stuff, that I would think, a great football season from the Pac-12, relatively speaking, could also drive up that value. Like, there are a lot of things to me that I'm just sitting here thinking they're not going to do this deal until they play some football and maybe even finish the football season. I just think that's where this is headed.
I think the fact that USC might be really good only exacerbates the problem. They're losing USC. True. They're losing that program. And let's be honest, the TV entities understand this. When you're playing a Pac-12 conference schedule, at least as of late, and maybe that'll evolve and change. As of now, Cal, Stanford, Colorado, Arizona State. Am I leaving someone out? They're wins. They're unless you screw it up. If you're Utah or USC, you're going to beat those schools, and that's not true in other conferences like the Big 12. So I think a lot of times they beat their chest about the number of teams they had ranked in the final rankings. Well, you give a Big 12 team 5 free victories, they're probably going to be ranked too. 4 or 5 free victories on your schedule, and boy, you look pretty good pretty quick. So it's. I don't think it's the kind of conference that plays a brand of football the rest of the country is really that interested in seeing, other than I'm drunk on a Saturday night at midnight. It's on the sports bars TV, and it's an entertaining mess of a game with poor officiating and lots of points. And I just don't see it. And
that feels accusatory, Tim. That feels accusatory.
That conference just is a mess. It really is. And again, it comes back to this. They have overvalued themselves where they've made negotiating with entities impossible. When you think you're worth $50 million at school, you're going to get laughed at the table, and people are going to. That's what we've seen happen.
I've been reading this thread on Twitter that Dennis Dodd from CBS Sports posted like 10 minutes ago, and talking about the Pac-12 media deal, and basically saying that industry sources still have no idea who this linear TV partner is going to be. And George Klavikoff is insisting that there is a linear TV partner. And I don't know. I mean, are we talking like the Cartoon Network at this point? Like, where are we? I know the ACC signed a deal with the CW, and that's, in place now. And is this really just a situation of the emperor having no clothes, that it's lies, that there really is no linear TV partner?
Well, I would hate to think that they would blatantly lie, but guys, they blatantly lied through this process. How many times?
Yeah.
I've got a list of 15 different times Pac-12 sources or Pac-12 reporters have said, our sources say, and it's coming the middle of March, and it's just on and on. I mean, that damn letter of support with each other was in February, and that letter from the conference itself said something will come out soon. I think this has been gaslighting at just a completely dysfunctional level. I'm shocked. I mean, when I get on there and see the number of fans who absolutely think, "Oh, this is going to work out great. We're going to get the third best deal." The Colorado chancellor just said that. It's not what the chancellor said. They're pushing to get a decision here, and they said only being the third highest paid conference per school will be a good decision. In other words, you ain't getting that deal, and we'll probably leave.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they're going to wait. All right, Feds, let's talk Big 12 here. Big 12 Media Days is in the books. Anything come out of there that caught your attention, or is it just the typical, and I don't mean the circus in a bad way. Is it just a typical, rotation of things? Are we taking anything away from what we saw at Big 12 Media Days as a whole?
I just thought it was interesting. It seemed like a 12-school event with Oklahoma and Texas hanging out. And last year it was so Oklahoma and Texas focused. Everyone was interested in them, and their media was asking really condescending questions to Brett Yormark about how could this conference possibly survive. Well, I think what transpired over the last year kind of, let them know the conference is going to be fine, and they're leaving. But, they bring their own horde of media, and I really didn't interact much with Oklahoma or Texas at all. They were just kind of there. It seemed like a celebration of the other 12 schools of the solidarity of this conference. It was a weird vibe, a kind of a cool vibe, because the 4 new schools really did bring some new energy to the event.
Looking at K-State football out of media days, and as we're getting ready and getting prepped for the upcoming season, of course, we know Will Howard is the guy. But in your mind, where do things stand behind him? Is it Rubley? Is it Johnson? What have you been seeing or hearing as far as the development of those guys behind Will Howard at quarterback?
I think you got it. I think it's Rubley right now. He's got some experience. He's made progress, Chris Kleiman says. But the talent of Avery Johnson is undeniable. What he adds might be too undeniable not to sample with a little bit this year. To get the 4 games, but Avery could bring such a quality to maybe run the Wildcat offense because he's such an elite runner with the ball who can also throw. I'll be interested to see how they use their quarterbacks. And, if you're a Big 12 quarterback, there's a good chance you're going to get down to number 2. Just how this conference is. And if Will Howard stays healthy, this team's going to be really tough to beat. But they will have to call on someone at some time. And how much of a rope they give Rubley when he's put in the game will be interesting because they know what they have is really something special in Avery Johnson. This is the best quarterback room at K-State I've ever seen. Maybe not necessarily at the moment. Right now, they've got more elite players than just one, but the future of this room is just outlandish. And they've got 2 4-star backups right now that were so highly sought after coming out of high school. I think they're in really good shape, but I will be really interested to see how they use these quarterbacks throughout the year.
I've thought about that a lot this offseason. I think that Johnson can be a weapon for this offense. And Like it always interests me. Like, so let's assume Will Howard's healthy, because I think if Will Howard gets hurt, then the situation with Johnson changes dramatically. But let's say that he stays healthy all year. I mean, is there a scenario where you can use Avery Johnson in your select games, but only in like high profile, really critical games? Like, do you select the biggest games on your schedule as the 4 you might use him in as a red shirt? And that's dangerous too, obviously, but it's a pretty interesting dynamic.
It really is. And you bring up a great point. You just say, kid, we believe in you. So we're saving you for Texas Tech, and TCU, and and just whoever else is feeling urgent at that moment. Or you say, kid, we believe in you, but you need some experience, so you're going to get in against SEMO, and if we get ahead of Troy or Missouri, I don't know how they'll view that. But I think they do want to put him out on the field at some point and use him, because his abilities are undeniable, and he has gotten much bigger, stronger in his time at K-State. It's really remarkable to see the new photos of him coming out.
Fitz, how important is it for Phillip Brooks to take a big step forward in his game this season? I would imagine that he's going to need to be sliding into, kind of that top role as a wide receiver for Will Howard. Is that kind of the way that you assess what his role will need to be this season?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have to definitely be a playmaker. There's no doubt about it. Probably, I'll be interested to see what they do with the kickoff returns, if they put Phil back there too. Now that, it's a main guy, now that Malik's gone. But they got Keegan Johnson out of Iowa, who they really like a lot. He's more of a, big, strong receiver. And I think Seth Porter moves into the walk-on receiver role that they've had, for so long at K-State. That guys that have really stepped up and played well. And I think they're going to be fine. I think throwing RJ Garcia and there's some other young guys. It'll be a journey to find out who's the playmakers. But once someone steps forward, I think they're going to get fed the ball quite a bit, like Ben Sims was last year at tight end.
Yeah, it is. I don't know. I mean, there's got to be who's the wide receiver that you think, and we haven't really seen him yet in real practice, but who is, we know Brooks, we know Sennett, who's the other guy? Like, who's going to be the guy this year?
I think Keegan Johnson's going to have a big year. That Iowa offense was so dysfunctional. I don't want to hold any receiver accountable for how bad it was. And I think they feel like, he's a kid that looked at K-State initially and now has come back around. And he showed some real flashes in spring football, but I think now that he's had time to absorb the system, I think you'll see him really emerge.
All right. Fitz, anything cool going on with you guys at GoPowerCat.com? It's almost a calm before the storm here a little bit, but what do you guys have up now?
Yeah, that's exactly it. We have a lot of podcasts and videos right now. Recruiting as it pops up because it's just such a chaotic but calm time of year, if that makes sense. It's like stuff just pops up out of nowhere. But right now, it's pretty calm. We do have our latest questions podcast up on the site. The latest Life of Fitz podcast is up on the site. I didn't work real hard on this week's guest, but I think my sister's pretty damn fascinating. So that was my guess. It's my podcast. I can do what I want. And then I'm waiting for Friday's Pac-12 Media Day, which also kind of emphasizes how little football means that conference. They've got 12 schools and yet they're having one day. And with the national media, how they start questioning the commissioner about this match will be very interesting, because even some of these national reporters that have played it straight are beginning to point out that how many times they've said a deal is near. And we've got conflicting reports that the board will hear, or the presidents will hear about it on Thursday night, on tonight, and other reports saying they're not going to hear anything for weeks. It's just a cluster. There's no other way to say it.
Yeah, it's going to be rough. All right, Fitz, we'll get the popcorn ready for that. It's going to be awkward. Be as awkward as the Colts releasing their new uniforms today, thinking people were actually going to be into it. If you've seen those, they're terrible.
I gotta find it. I gotta find it. Why mess with those uniforms?
You found it? You don't like them? You You do like them?
No, I mean, but why mess with their classic uniforms?
I don't know. They made a black helmet, and they could have just put the black helmet maybe, or just give them like a black jersey, but they didn't. They said, all right, you know who's really dominated uniforms? Duke football. And that's sort of what they went with. So it's a little awkward right now. It's always awkward when they do that, when these teams roll these out, like everyone's going, oh, these are so cool. And everyone's like, ooh, like,
what's jarring?
What's
jarring about the entire thing is that we've had back-to-back uniform reveals in the last 2 days, and the Seahawks throwbacks are amazing.
Oh,
we have that on one day, and then these terrible Colt uniforms today. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, but we'll see. We can gauge the awkwardness of that versus Klykov the first time he steps to the podium later this week. Yeah, they're terrible.
They're bad.
They're awful.
You can find them on Twitter. Okay. They're easy to find because everybody's making fun of them right now. All right, Fitz, let's do it again next week as we inch our way to a football season.
Oh, my gosh. Is next week August yet? No, not quite. I got one more week.
Not quite.
Good.
Yeah. One more week to lounge out and catch a tan by the pool, Fitz. Do it.
Nobody wants to see me do that.
That's not true. Come on. That's not true. All right. There goes Tim Fitzgerald. GoPowerCat.com. You can check out his work there. We're going to come back. We'll dive back into some of these NFL training camp storylines that have developed very early in camp, some of the more meaningful holdouts, who actually would do it. That's all coming. Sports Daily. All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily here on KFH. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. There'll be another warm one here today. Let's give away some iced tea, Chad. Let's give away 2 free iced tea certificates, coupons, or cards, actually. But they'll get you a couple. You take a friend, whatever, 2 of them to HTO here in Wichita. It's east at 21st to 127th, west at 13th and Tyler. Soon you'll be able to use those in Derby as well. But you can get your hands on a couple of those right now to our first caller to the IHOP hotline, 869-1240. Good luck and cool off with more than 25 flavors of iced tea. All right, Tommy, training camp. We'll dig back into this just a little bit here. It's interesting on some of these holdouts. Saquon Barkley went on a podcast yesterday and basically said he has to consider whether he wants to say F you to the Giants and his teammates and hold out, or whether he wants to play on this year. Saquon's a little bit different. He's been paid to some degree. The problem, which we highlighted earlier this week, is this franchise tag number being so low for running backs based on, just the market value. And it's tough. I get it. I get why these running backs are upset, but that's the marketplace now. So we have to watch that. We have to watch Josh Jacobs. We have to, continue to look at this stuff. And I think more importantly, as a whole, we have to watch sort of this unity developing among running backs. And there's a long list of them now. Some of the real stars in this game starting to push back a little bit. And there's not a collective bargaining agreement anytime soon. I don't know if there's a solution here. I offered up earlier in the week, maybe marry the 2 tags with a running back and a wide receiver. But I don't know what you do. But if it happens and you get some holdouts, I mean, for Saquon Barkley, it's not going to be good for his career, right? I don't think it helps him at all. Josh Jacobs, I don't know, but they're really sort of stuck here, and I don't know. Like, if you're the Giants and it's Saquon Barkley and he is the biggest part of your offense, right? I mean, what do you do here? Do you just say then hold out? I don't know, because that's a playoff team from a year ago.
Yeah, I think you're right. And what makes it so difficult with the running back position is, as we've discussed, their shelf life is so small and so limited comparative to other positions in the NFL. Think of Le'Veon Bell, who held out and didn't play for a pretty significant portion of the season for the Steelers when he was franchise tagged for a second time. I think that you can make the argument that his career never really rebounded. He went to the Jets and then he kind of bounced around. He played for a minute, had a cup of coffee with the Chiefs, but was never really that dominant running back anymore. And I'm not saying that it was because he held out that his career was never the same, but he was sitting out during a time when he could still be productive. And that's what makes it really difficult. And like for a guy like Saquon Barkley, you've got a certain number of years where you can be a viable running back and a successful running back in the league. And if you hold out, you set out for the entire season, then you've basically lost that opportunity to be productive for one of those prime years. So that's what makes it, super interesting. And I think concerning if a guy the talent of Saquon Barkley doesn't play this season.
Well, yeah, when we saw it with Le'Veon Bell, and one of the things about running backs is they age out a little quicker,
Yeah,
or a lot quicker than most positions most of the time. Not always, but most of the time. I don't know what you do. And look, if you go and actually, like, don't read the headlines of Saquon Barkley, because all you're going to get is Saquon Barkley says F you to the Giants. That's not what he said at all. If you go actually listen to or watch the clip of what he was talking about, he's conflicted. He doesn't know what to do. And that's his point. Like, do I really have to take it to this point? I don't know what to do. If you know me and how I'm wired, the thought of not playing football, not being there for my teammates, like, I don't know that I can do it, but I don't know that I have another choice right now. So basically, say I got to talk to people that I care about to get some advice here, because I don't know what to do. I feel for him. I feel for all these running backs. I get it, right? Like, they're asked to carry these incredible burdens early in their careers when they aren't allowed to get paid a lot. And then when it's time at every other position, when that happens and it's time to pay guys get paid, except at that position. I mean, it's an outlier to the marketplace of the NFL.
And I know that it's a little bit of a different situation between what happened with Le'Veon Bell and the Steelers and what's going on now with Saquon Barkley to an extent. But I mean, that's the most recent example of a running back holding out and not playing the entire season. Looking at his stats after that holdout year, he basically had one full season in the NFL left. And that was the very next year with the New York Jets. But he only rushed for, under 800 yards in 2019.
It wasn't good.
Played a couple of games with the Jets in 2020, played with the Chiefs, and then bounced around to the Ravens and the Bucks, and was never really the running back that we were used to seeing after that holdout year. That's the risk with Saquon Barkley. And I understand. I'm not saying, well, just, shut up and take the franchise tag and take the money and play. What I am saying is that Saquon Barkley, you do run that risk, and let Le'Veon Bell be a cautionary tale of what happens if you do end up setting out an entire season due to a holdout with the franchise tag.
It's hard. It's hard because in any other, scenario, the franchise tag is not a bad financial investment, right? You're being taken care of in that short-term space. But I don't know, and I don't think that the Giants have much room, if at all. They got like 3.8 million. So I don't know if they can say, all right, instead of 10, we'll give you a 12.5, because they can only do so much, right? Other than give him a long-term deal, which is what he wants. So I don't know how this works for a team trying to take care of these guys, because right now you're basically forcing the team to make a bad business decision. Essentially, that's what you're asking teams to do, right? Or a running back to just have to take it. And I think that's where it's tough. And we'll see. There's going to be something, I think, within the next handful of years that happens that will get this changed. It's just like, what is that? Because when Le'Veon Bell did this, you didn't have basically the rest of the league at that position saying, yeah, he's right. We stand behind him. We're starting to see that now. And that's, it's obvious why, right? The good business model right now in the NFL is to draft a running back, use them like crazy for a few years, and then don't pay them when they need to be paid and move on to the next one. That's where the issue is.
A couple of other suggestions could be, and we talked about this the other day in regards to the Major League Baseball draft, is where, they've got the slot positions when they're drafted. I think maybe you look more at, potentially having you set a minimum, and that would have to be in collective bargaining, but you set a minimum out of the draft by position. So each position has a minimum contract that you sign somebody for. That's an idea. Another idea that I've heard floated around, and I don't know if this really solves the salary issue or the franchise tag issue, but it does maybe improve the shelf life and durability issue. And that is, there could be a rule that is put into place where if you're a running back in college, you're allowed to leave college earlier and declare for the NFL draft. Because of course, as we've talked about, you're in the prime when you are in your very early 20s at that position. And then from there, it kind of all goes downhill. So if you make those players at that position eligible at a younger age to go to the draft and play in the NFL, that could help a little bit too.
Sometimes I think that's why, honestly, Nick Saban is always able to get like 2 or 3 of the best highly recruited running backs, because it's an easy sell. Look, you come here. Yeah. We're not going to put the tread on your tires. The NFL teams will actually like that. You can still show how good you are. And we'll do it that way. That's worked for them.
And now in the world of NIL, they've got prime earning value in college, and they're probably, in a lot of cases, the best they're ever going to be when they're playing in college.
At least, the most tread on their tires. I do think the simplest answer is just to marry it to the wide receiver franchise tag. It makes teams have to make the tough decision and not the player, right? Because at that point, if that cap was, because, it would be closer to, 20 million, like 18 or something. And now the team has a tough decision to make. Do you really want to do that on a 1-year deal, or do you want to give them a 2-year deal for 13 million a year, right? Like, Saquon Barkley, you can come in and you'll have a $20 million cap number or a tag number, or, we'll give you 2 years and $30 million. What do you, and then
Right.
now you've got a couple of good options if you're the player, right? You can just keep getting tagged and you're earning a ton. That's what happens with quarterbacks. It's like, tag me all you want. You're gonna have to pay me $50 million a year now. So it's interesting. I don't know what the answer is, but it'll.
Do you think, by the way, I just want to, I'd love to get your thought on this, because I've heard speculation from various people around the football world that they think that there is active collusion going on with the teams in the league to hold down the salaries of running backs. Do you think that it's active, like that there's something that is in place, like deliberately doing this, or it's just been the circumstances that we've got?
It's the right business decision. It is the correct business decision. It's not all that different than Deshaun Watson getting that outrageous contract with the Browns. Is there collusion? I don't know that they're like inherently calling each other and saying, all right, everybody, no, nobody go and pay your quarterback, right? No, I think what's happening is, like, collectively they're looking at it and being like, well, we're not going to do that because we don't need to. Like, that's a stupid thing to do. And I think, you have to look at it from that, you're trying to win football games. And right now the path to do that is to not pay running backs. It's to use them as much as you can while they're on a small contract. For quarterbacks, it's like, if you can draft a great young quarterback and your best opportunity to win is before they sign their big deal, it's not that different for running backs, except that, right now the market doesn't demand them to ever get a big deal. And so, that's the business path to doing this. And so the market has allowed that to happen. Is that correctable? I don't know. I don't think it's correctable without regulation. Like, I don't think there's, the Deshaun Watson situation was correctable by the market, right? The market corrected that. Like, nope, that's not where the market is. You're insane, Cleveland. That's not what we're going to do. The market's never going to correct this running back issue because it's not the same thing, right? And because of age, because of wear and tear, different positions, all that stuff, you're going to have to regulate it to correct it. Now, some would say you don't need to regulate it and let the market go. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. But what I keep harping on is you're going to have a problem because these running backs are going to say, all right, that's enough. Like, we're not doing this anymore. That's just the way it is. So we'll see. If Saquon Barkley doesn't play, I don't like the Giants as a playoff team this year anyway. If Saquon Barkley's not there, I really don't like him. He's interesting. Josh Jacobs is a little less interesting because I don't think the Raiders are going to be very good anyway. But they need him. I mean, he was great last year. The Zach Martin with the Cowboys, though, you sent that to me yesterday, caught me totally off guard. I'm like, wait, what? He has all the leverage in the world, other than, he's getting older and maybe a little injury prone. But man, Jerry Jones always paid outside of the Dak Prescott scenario, right? Like, that's the only one where it's really been weird and wacky and lasted a long time, and that had its own nuances. But Zach Martin, who has been a Pro Bowler every year but one, when he only played 10 games now. How many years is he into the league? He's entering, I think he's finished 9. He's been a Pro Bowl in 8 of those 9. He's a Hall of Famer. Sure. He's played 16 and 17 games in the last 2 years, Tommy. Cowboys are totally going to cave on this. Like, if Zach Martin threatens to hold out, I'm like, whoa. Like, what do you need, big fella? I mean, you got to pay Zach Martin.
Yeah, without a doubt. And he's been the anchor, for them for a long time. And with a franchise that, seems like there's always been a level of instability, he's been the stable one for sure. And so if he's finally raising his hand and saying, look, I think I'm underpaid, I'm not happy with my current contract compared to other players at my position, I want to get paid more. Absolutely, it's in the best interest of Jerry Jones and the Cowboys to basically give him whatever he wants.
It is crazy how good he's been. His last contract extension came in 2018. It is time. I'd never paid that much attention to his contract, but he's missed significant time, like only one time That's it.
Yeah.
Which was also like the only time he wasn't a Pro Bowler. They could rework his deal and save money. I don't know why this hasn't happened. That's what surprised me about it, is that Jerry Jones would even let it get to this point, because Jerry Jones, to a fault almost, has always taken care of his guys, right? Like, to, in some cases, not for good reason, but that's just the kind of owner he is. How has this happened with Zach Martin? Boy, I don't have a clue, because that's it's like the biggest no-brainer ever. He's only 32, Tommy, and there are people that scout him and say he is in the conversation for one of the best interior linemen that have ever played this game. And he sits there with a contract dispute because he hasn't had a new deal reworked in 5 years. That's crazy.
And it makes me wonder if, the deal that he signed back in 2018, if the Cowboys thought, all right, we put that to bed, we don't have to deal with it for a long time. And they've kind of started doing other things, right? And, Martin probably played nice for a while and, started seeing other linemen getting deals here and there. And finally, I think the fact that he actually went public with it shows that maybe he's been trying to push that along for a little while now with not a lot of results, not a lot of success. He's gone public with it. I think we're going to see some kind of contract extension or reworking of his deal coming pretty soon.
I mean, he and Aaron Donald and Justin Jefferson and Travis Kelce, I think, are the only 99 club, which has apparently become a thing from Madden. Not that that means a whole lot, but I think he's like using it, which is interesting. You got to get Zach Martin paid, man. What you do, you can't have that if you're Jerry Jones. All right, let's take a quick break. Congratulations to Ron for winning our Win Surge vouchers. Congratulations to Corey for winning some iced tea from HTO. An interesting Royals transaction today, and it makes me wonder if it has any impact on the trade deadline. We'll tell you as they get ready for some day baseball. That's next on Sports Daily. All right, welcome back, everybody. The Royals actually at 1 o'clock this afternoon, and they announce a transaction, Tommy, that is interesting. Zach Greinke's coming back. I wonder if Zach Greinke can become somebody that's desirable, and is he maybe already for a contender? He'd be more of a back into the rotation guy. I don't think anybody's going to give up a lot to get him, but I'm not as interested in like what could the Royals get for him as I am with could he go somewhere and help a team right now that's in contention? I think he probably can. As many injuries across baseball as there are this year.
I think as long as those expectations from a contender are well managed on what Greinke is and what he's not at this stage of his career. He's not the Zach Greinke with the Astros, or the Dodgers that, helped them out in the postseason over the last few years. But if he can come in, and be somebody that could eat up a handful of innings for you, he's not going to light up the radar gun. He's not going to do a lot of things that, you would expect from a top tier pitcher on a contender's roster. But yeah, I mean, I guess in some capacity, and maybe it's more in the clubhouse than anything else because he's been there before, maybe he could make some kind of impact for a contender down the stretch.
He was good in May. He was not good in June. He had a stretch there in May where he went no runs, 3-2-2, 1-0. Like all his May starts were actually pretty good. And then it sort of unraveled on him a little bit there in June. And then on July 4th, before they sat him down for a second, if you can capture what he did in May, which it is Zach Greinke, it is a Hall of Famer, it is all of these things, then, I think that he does help some teams that have just been decimated by injury in the starting rotation, of which there are quite a few that are major contenders. And I do think that has value to come in as a fourth or fifth starter.
I just think that whatever that contender is that would bring him in to maybe help shore up their rotation a little bit, as long as you know what Zach Greinke is and what Zach Greinke isn't. The last thing I would want would be a contender to pick him up with these expectations that he's going to be a lockdown dominant pitcher in the postseason for them this season, because I don't think that Greinke is that anymore in his career. But I do think that by eating up some innings, he could still have some value.
He pitches today, so we'll see. I think that, man, I don't know. And that's what teams don't know, right? Are you trading for May Zach Greinke, or are you trading for June? Because you wouldn't trade for June Zach Greinke. I think that his starts over the next 2 or 3 weeks are going to be pretty well. We don't even have 2 or 3 weeks. How many starts does he potentially have here? He'll have today and certainly one more.
Yeah, maybe one more.
It's probably going to come down to that. I think he would be a last minute thing. And the other part of it is too, they're not going to trade him if he doesn't want to be traded. I think the organization owes him that. And so it could come down to that too. But, and if you want to guess at what Zach Greinke's thinking or feeling, good luck, because that's a fool's errand. He is an interesting guy for sure. So if he has an interest in contending though, and he has a couple of good starts here, I think there's plenty of teams where he could come in as a fifth starter and help them out, a fourth starter, and maybe more, right? Maybe you get desperate and he can help you as a third, because he did pitch to, that level for a month this year. I don't know. I saw that news, but you'll hear that game right here on KFH at 1 o'clock. Zach Greinke, the team announced, will come up and start for them. So that'll be interesting and fun to watch there for that with the Kansas City Royals. Not really a lot else on the Major League Baseball landscape. The Orioles make a move. I'm surprised, Tommy, quite frankly, that we haven't seen more trade movement yet, with now just 10 days to go, essentially. I think it's coming.
We will. Yep. It's going to happen.
Gary Woodland, by the way, even par through 15, which is 5 strokes off the lead. It puts him inside the top 30, so not a bad start for Gary Woodland today. Maybe he can mix in a birdie or two down the stretch here and really climb into the mix, but something to keep an eye on out at the British Open. We'll come back. We'll tell you what's on. What's that, Jad? Oh, Jad was giving us time for you. Sorry about that. We'll come back. We'll give you what's on tap next.
I stopped smoking with Mark Patrick's hypnosis when nothing else worked. 1 year later, my wife Michelle and I attended the Mark Patrick weight loss hypnosis seminar. In 2 months, lost 43 pounds, and she lost 18 pounds.
And we feel great.
Join Mark Patrick's hypnosis seminar. Lose the weight or stop smoking. Early bird special, only $49.99 guaranteed. Seminar Saturday, August 12th at the Spring Hill Suite.
All right. That's it for us today, everybody. Our thanks to Chelsea Messenger, our betting insider. Our thanks to Tim Fitzgerald, our K-State insider. Go back and listen to either of those interviews for free on the Odyssey app. Tommy and I will be back tomorrow. We'll take a look at this Open Championship, this British Open, see how that goes. We have the Aftershocks in purple and black, the alumni teams tonight. Don't forget, you've got the Royals at 1 o'clock here on KFH. Abbreviated Jim Rome before Zach Brayton takes the punt. Congratulations to our winners. Tommy, let's do it again tomorrow.
Yeah, sounds good. We'll see you all on Friday.
For Tommy and Jad, I'm Jacob. We'll see you then.